The first time Karen looked at me like that, I nearly dropped the wrench. Not because she was loud about it, or because she said something obvious. It was the quiet way her eyes stayed on my hands as I tightened a bolt, like she was watching more than the bed frame. Like she was trying to figure out what kind of man I'd become, and what it would feel like to be close to him. I'm Caleb. I'm 25. I live in a small town in Oregon, where the days feel like copies of each other. Pine trees, lake water, the same diner, the same faces. I'm a freelancer who fixes things. I build shelves, repair decks, patch roofs, assemble furniture people, order online, and regret the second it shows up in 5 heavy boxes. It is not glamorous, but it keeps my bills paid and my mind from wandering too far. My mom passed 2 years ago, and after that I stopped chasing anything that felt like it could break me. I kept life simple. Work, home, repeat. A 1-bedroom rental near the edge of town with a crooked porch and a view of trees that sway like they're always whispering. Ryan has been my best friend since we were kids. We used to fish at the lake and sneak sodas from his mom's fridge and stay up too late in his basement playing video games. Ryan got out. He made it big. He is an aerospace engineer in Atlanta now, the kind of guy who talks about launches and deadlines and airports like it's normal. Last Friday, while I was sanding down a table for a client, my phone buzzed. Ryan texted me, "Hey man, Mom got this old wooden bed frame. Says she'll assemble it herself, but she's 48. Can you help? I'll pay you." I laughed out loud in my workshop. Karen had always been stubborn. She was the mom who could carry grocery bags in one trip, the mom who fixed her own sink, the mom who yelled at us for tracking mud inside, and then made us grilled cheese anyway. I texted him back, "No payment needed. I'll swing by." I told myself it was no big deal. It would be good to see the house again. It would be good to feel like a kid for an afternoon, even if just for a second. So that evening I grabbed my toolbox, climbed into my beat-up truck, and drove 10 minutes toward the lake. Karen's house still looked the same. Cedar siding, big windows, a porch swing that moved with the wind like it was breathing. The sun was going down, painting the lake orange and gold. The whole place felt like memory. I knocked, and the door opened almost right away. Karen stood there in a dark green t-shirt and faded jeans. Her curly hair was tied back in a loose knot, a few strands falling around her face like she'd stopped trying to control them. She smiled, and something in my chest pulled tight. She didn't look like a different person. She looked like Karen. But I did not feel like the same kid. "Caleb," she said, and her voice was warm like she'd been saving it for me. "God, you're all grown up." She pulled me into a quick hug, and I caught a soft scent of lavender. It hit me so hard it almost made me dizzy. Like a doorway back to being 15 and sitting on her couch with greasy hair and a sunburn, laughing at something stupid Ryan said. But my hands were bigger now. My shoulders were broader. My life was heavier. And when I stepped back, she didn't feel like someone's mom. She felt like a woman. "Hey, Karen," I said, trying to sound normal as my toolbox clunked against my leg. "Ryan said you're fighting a bed frame." She laughed, soft and easy, and waved me inside. "You sound like him." "Come on, it's in the bedroom." I followed her through the living room, past the old couch where Ryan and I used to crash, and into a bedroom I'd never really been in before. The room was calm. Light walls. A couple watercolor paintings. Clean sheets folded on a chair. The air smelled faintly like old wood and lavender. In the middle of the floor sat a disassembled walnut bed frame, heavy and ornate, like it had a story behind it. I set my tools down and crouched, sorting pieces and screws, already picturing how it all fit together. Karen leaned against the doorway, holding a mug of tea, watching me like she had nowhere else to be. "Still good with your hands?" she asked, tilting her head. I looked up and grinned, trying to keep it light. "Hope so. I haven't broken anyone's house yet." She chuckled, and that sound hung in the air a little too long. I went back to work, sliding a side rail into place, tightening the first bolt. The room was quiet, except for the metal turning and the soft creak of the floor when she shifted her weight. Then she said, your mom would have been proud. My hand paused on the wrench. It still hit like a punch hearing my mom brought up out loud. Most people in town avoided it now like they were scared it might crack me open. But Karen said it like it was safe to say, like it was safe to feel. I swallowed. Yeah, I managed, forcing a small laugh. She'd probably say I'm wasting my life on furniture. Karen didn't laugh with me. She stepped a little closer, not all the way, but enough that I could feel her presence more. She'd say you're still finding your way, she said. And that's okay. I stared at the bolt like it had become interesting. I didn't trust myself to look at her too long, so I focused on the bed frame. I lined up the next piece, slid the screw in, and tightened it down until the wood pulled snug. Solid. Clean. No wobble. Karen watched every move like she was learning something. The longer I worked, the more I felt that strange shift. Like I was building more than a bed. Like every click of metal and wood was bringing something closer, something I didn't have a name for yet. After an hour, the frame was mostly standing. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stood to stretch my back. Karen's eyes moved up my arms to my face, slow, like she wasn't in a hurry. "Do you want coffee?" she asked softly. Real coffee, not the gas station stuff you and Ryan used to drink. I smiled, grateful for something normal. "Yeah," I said. "That sounds good." She left the room, and I stood there alone, staring at the half-built bed. I told myself I was overthinking, that Karen was just being kind, that I was just tired and lonely, and my brain was making trouble out of nothing. But when she came back with 2 mugs and her fingers brushed mine as she handed one over, my heart kicked hard like it was warning me. I took a sip, and she sat down slowly on the edge of the unfinished bed frame like she was testing it. The wood creaked once. She looked up at me, eyes calm, voice low. "You should try it," she said. I blinked. "Try what?" She nodded toward the bed, then back at me. "Lying down," she said, almost playful. Then she paused, and her voice turned softer, deeper, like she was admitting something she'd held in too long. "With someone," she added. Her gaze didn't move as she said the last part. "Like me." My mouth went dry. The room felt smaller. And in that moment, with the smell of coffee and lavender and old wood around us, I realized the bed was not the thing she wanted me to test. She wanted to know if I would stay. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to walk away. My brain went blank for a second, like someone had turned down the volume on the whole world. Karen sat on the edge of the unfinished bed frame, one hand resting on the wood like she was steadying herself. The other hand held her coffee mug close to her chest. Her eyes stayed on mine, calm but serious, like she'd already made peace with whatever happened next. I stood there with a wrench in my hand, feeling stupid, like I'd forgotten how to breathe. "Karen," I said, and even my own voice sounded strange. "What are you saying?" She didn't flinch. She didn't laugh it off. She just nodded once, slow. "I'm saying I'm tired of feeling invisible," she said. "I'm saying you've been in my house for years, and I've watched you grow up into a man who knows how to build things that hold." Her words hit me in the chest. Because it wasn't just flirting, it was something heavier. Something honest. "I'm Ryan's mom," she added, like she knew exactly what I was thinking. "I know that. You don't have to remind me." My throat tightened. Ryan, my best friend, the kid I grew up with. The guy who called her mom, the same way I used to say it when I was eating her lasagna in the kitchen. "I can't," I said, but it came out weak. Not a decision, more like fear. Karen's eyes softened. "You can," she said. "You just don't know if you should." The bed frame creaked again as she shifted her weight, and for some reason that sound grounded me. Wood and screws and bolts, simple things. Things I understood. Feelings were not simple. I set the wrench down on the floor slowly, like I was disarming a weapon. Then I pulled in a breath and stepped closer, keeping my hands at my sides. "What happened?" I asked quietly. "Why are you saying this now?" Karen looked down at her coffee mug. Her thumb traced the rim like she needed something to do with her hands. "Ryan left," she said. "A year ago, and I was proud. I still am. But when he moved to Atlanta, the house got quieter than I expected. And the marriage I already lost a long time ago." I blinked. "Lost?" She gave a small, tired smile. His dad and I divorced when Ryan was in high school. You were around, Caleb, you just didn't see the parts. One kept behind closed doors. I felt my face heat up. She was right. I had been around, but I had only seen what she let us see. A warm kitchen, a safe couch, a strong woman who always seemed okay. I've been fine, she said, but the way she said it made it clear she didn't mean it. I've kept busy. I've taught weekend classes. I've made paper flowers and tried to tell myself that quiet is peace. She looked up then, and her eyes were bright like she was holding back tears without letting them fall. But sometimes quiet is just lonely, she said. Sometimes it's just empty. My chest tightened so hard it scared me. I wanted to tell her I understood, because I did. After my mom passed, my place had felt like a box that echoed. I'd filled it with work to avoid hearing my own thoughts. I'd told myself I liked being alone. But alone and lonely were not the same. I didn't mean to put this on you, Karen said quickly like she was worried she'd pushed too far. You came here to help with a bed. I should have kept my mouth shut. Quote, she started to stand up like she was about to undo the whole moment, like she was about to retreat back into being Karen who makes spaghetti and never says the hard stuff. And without thinking, I reached out. My hand caught her wrist gently. She froze. So did I. Her skin was warm, real. And that touch sent a jolt through me so strong, my stomach flipped. Karen's eyes dropped to my hand on her wrist, then back up to my face. I let go right away like I'd touched fire. I'm sorry, I said fast. I shouldn't. No, she whispered. It's okay. We stood there, too close, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. Then, Karen took a slow breath and sat back down on the bed frame, like she didn't want to run anymore. I've watched you come back to this town and keep your head down, she said. I've watched you carry that grief like you think it's something you're supposed to handle alone. I stared at her, stunned. You notice that? I asked. She gave a small nod. I notice a lot. My heart pounded. I wanted to ask her when she started seeing me like this, not as Ryan's friend, not as a kid. But I didn't know if I could handle the answer. Instead, I looked around the room, desperate for something normal again. My eyes landed on the bed frame, half finished, still missing the slats. I should finish, I said, grabbing at the excuse. The bed, I mean. Karen's lips curved faintly. Of course. I dropped to my knees and started sliding slats into place, focusing hard on lining them up straight. My hands were steady again, because my hands knew what to do, even if my mind didn't. Behind me, Karen stayed seated on the edge of the bed, silent, watching. Every few minutes, I felt her gaze like heat on the back of my neck. When I tightened the last screw, I stood up and wiped my hands on my jeans. Okay, I said, clearing my throat. Try it now, it's solid. Karen looked up at me. She didn't move right away. Then she shifted back on the mattress slowly, testing the frame. It didn't creak, it held. She nodded, like she was pleased, but her eyes weren't on the bed. They were on me. You build things like you mean it, she said. Like you want them to last. Quote. I swallowed. Maybe I just don't like doing a job twice, I said, trying to joke. Karen smiled, but it was soft and serious at the same time. No, she said. It's more than that. The room went quiet again. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, loud in the stillness. I pulled it out without thinking. A text from Ryan. Yo, thanks again for helping Mom. She texted me saying you came through. You're the best, man. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I was falling. Karen saw my face change and she knew. She stood up slowly, like the words on my screen had shifted the air between us. I shouldn't have said anything, she whispered, and this time her voice sounded smaller, like she hated herself for wanting something. I looked at her, and the guilt hit me hard. But so did something else. The truth. Because even with Ryan's text on my screen, even with my conscience screaming, I couldn't pretend I hadn't felt it too. That pull, that warmth, that moment where her voice made my chest feel less empty than it had in years. I locked my phone and shoved it back into my pocket. Karen, I said quietly, stepping closer again. I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do with it." She held my gaze, her eyes shining now, but she didn't cry. She was too proud for that. "Then don't do anything," she said. "Not yet. Just be honest with yourself." I nodded slowly, my throat tight. Outside, the lake wind rattled the porch swing, and somewhere in the house, a clock ticked loud like it was counting down to a choice I wasn't ready to make. Karen walked past me toward the doorway, then paused. Without turning around, she said, "Stay for dinner if you want. No pressure. Just dinner." I stood there, staring at her back, feeling the weight of Ryan's text like a stone in my pocket. Then I looked at the bed I'd built, solid, steady, holding more than wood, holding a line I wasn't sure I could stop myself from crossing. I stayed. Not because dinner sounded good, even though the smell of garlic and simmering sauce was already spreading through the house. I stayed because walking out felt like I'd be running from something that had been building quietly for weeks without me admitting it. Karen moved around the kitchen like she'd done it 1,000 times. She filled a pot with water, turned the stove on, pulled tomatoes and basil from the fridge. It was simple, normal, the kind of scene that should have made everything feel safe again. But nothing about it felt safe. I stood near the doorway, watching her, my hands shoved in my pockets like I didn't trust them to stay still. "You can sit," she said without looking up. "You don't have to hover like you're waiting for a verdict." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and walked to the kitchen table. The chair scraped softly on the floor, loud in the quiet. Karen set 2 plates down later, spaghetti and salad, nothing fancy. We ate in a calm silence that felt like it had teeth. Every few bites, my mind tried to drag me back to Ryan's text. "You're the best, man." I felt like the worst. Karen must have felt it too, because she kept the conversation light on purpose. She asked about work, about a porch I was building for an older couple in town, about how my truck was still running. I answered, but my voice didn't sound like mine. Halfway through the meal, Karen reached for her water glass and her sleeve slid up, showing the faint tan line where her wedding ring used to be. I stared at it before I could stop myself. She noticed. She set the glass down slowly and looked at me. "You keep thinking about him?" she said softly. I swallowed. "Yeah." Karen nodded like she expected that. "You love him." "Like a brother," I said, and the words came out rough. She took a slow breath, her eyes steady. "Then don't betray him." The directness hit me hard, not because it was harsh, but because it was exactly what my guilt had been screaming. I pushed my plate away a little, appetite gone. "I don't want to," I admitted. "I never wanted to be this guy." Karen leaned back in her chair, hands folded in her lap. "You're not that guy yet," she said. "You're just a man standing at the edge of something he didn't expect." Quote. I stared down at the table, at a small scratch in the wood, and felt my throat tighten. "This started when you asked me to come here," I said quietly. "Did you already know what you were doing?" Karen's eyes flickered, and for the first time that night she looked like she might break. "No," she whispered. "I asked because my back was sore, and I didn't want to wrestle that bed frame alone." That part was true. She paused, then added, "But when you walked in, I realized I'd been missing something I didn't even have the right to miss." The room went still. I looked up at her. "What?" Karen's voice stayed calm, but her fingers tightened against each other. "Being seen," she said. "Not as a mom, not as a teacher, not as somebody's ex-wife, just as me." Her eyes didn't leave mine. "And then you started coming by," she continued. "Tuesdays, coffee, donuts, little excuses." I opened my mouth, but she lifted a hand, stopping me. "I'm not blaming you," she said. "I liked it. I waited for it. I started buying extra coffee pods because I knew you'd show up." Quote. That hit me like a punch, because it was true, and because it meant she'd been lonely in a way I never saw. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, my hands clasped tight. "I didn't plan it," I admitted. "After my mom died, my place felt like a box. I'd come home, sit in silence, and it felt like my chest was filling with static." Karen listened, not interrupting. "So when I came here," I said, "it felt like the only room in town where the air didn't press down on me." Karen's eyes softened, and she nodded slowly like she understood. I know that feeling, she said. That's why I said what I said in the bedroom. I swallowed. And now what? Karen didn't answer right away. She stood, picked up our plates and carried them to the sink. The sound of water running filled the gap, like she needed noise to think. I got up and joined her, taking a towel to dry dishes. We worked side by side, shoulders almost brushing. It was so normal it hurt. Then Karen turned the water off and faced me. Her face was close enough that I could see the faint freckles on her cheeks, the tired lines at the corners of her eyes, the strength there too. I want to ask you something, she said. My stomach tightened. Okay. She held my gaze. If Ryan wasn't my son, would you have let yourself feel this? Quote. The question was sharp, honest, and it cut straight through every excuse I had. I opened my mouth, then closed it, because I knew the answer. Yes, I said finally. Karen's breath caught. And if I wasn't Ryan's mom, she whispered, would you have wanted me to touch you right now? My heart slammed so hard I felt it in my throat. I didn't move. I didn't reach for her, but I didn't step back either. Yes, I said, voice low. The silence between us felt electric. Karen lifted her hand slowly, careful, like she was giving me the choice to stop it. Her fingers hovered near my cheek, not touching yet. You can say no, she whispered. I shook my head once. Her fingers touched my cheek lightly, warm, and my entire body went still. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. It was something quieter, something that felt like permission and danger at the same time. Then my phone buzzed again. I flinched like I'd been caught. Karen pulled her hand back instantly, like the moment burned. I grabbed my phone, and my stomach dropped. A call from Ryan. I stared at the screen. The name lit up like a warning. Karen's face went pale, and her hand went to her chest like she couldn't breathe. Answer it, she said quickly. Answer it right now. My fingers shook as I swiped. Yo, Ryan's voice came through, bright and easy. You with my mom right now? The question made my skin go cold. I glanced at Karen. She stood frozen, eyes wide, waiting. Yeah, I forced out. Just finished the bed frame. Stayed for dinner. Ryan laughed. Man, thank you. Seriously. She sounded happier when she texted me. I've been worried about her, being alone out there by the lake. Guilt stabbed so deep it almost made me dizzy. Yeah, I said, swallowing hard. She's doing okay. Ryan's voice softened. Put her on for a second. I want to say hi. My heart stopped. I looked at Karen, her eyes filled with fear and something like shame. She shook her head fast, but Ryan was waiting. Hold on, I said, voice tight. I covered the phone for a second and whispered, he wants to talk to you. Karen's lips parted, and for a moment I thought she might refuse. Then she inhaled, straightened her shoulders, and nodded once, like she was choosing to be strong. I handed her the phone. Her fingers trembled as she held it to her ear. Hi, sweetheart, she said, voice warm, normal, like she wasn't standing in the middle of a storm. Ryan started talking, telling her about work, about Atlanta traffic, about some project he was excited about. Karen laughed at the right moments. She asked him if he was eating. She told him to sleep more. And I stood there watching her, realizing something that made my chest ache. She was good at pretending. She'd been pretending for years. When she finally handed the phone back, Ryan said, Love you, Mom. Karen's voice stayed steady. Love you too. The call ended. The kitchen went silent again. Karen stared at the floor like she couldn't bear to meet my eyes. That, she whispered, barely audible, is why this can't be a game. I stepped closer, my voice low. It's not a game to me. She looked up then, eyes shining. Then, what is it? She asked. I didn't have an easy answer. My chest felt full of guilt and want and fear, but I knew one thing. I don't want to stop seeing you, I said. Karen's breath caught. And I don't want to hurt him, I added. Her lips trembled. Those two things might not fit together. I nodded slowly, because she was right. Outside, the porch swing creaked with the wind off the lake. Inside, we stood in a kitchen that suddenly felt like a line in the sand. And I could feel the next step coming. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Soon. And whatever it was, it would change everything. I drove home that night with my hands tight on the steering wheel, like if I loosened up even a little, I might fall apart. The road along the lake was dark and quiet, just the moonlight on the water and the pine trees swaying like they were whispering about me. I kept hearing Ryan's voice in my head. "Love you, Mom." And I kept seeing Karen's face when she handed me the phone back, trying to look strong, while her eyes begged me not to let this get messy. When I got to my place, I didn't even turn on the TV. I sat on the edge of my couch and stared at my mom's old toolbox sitting by the door. The same one I kept telling myself was my anchor. The truth was, I didn't feel anchored at all. I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment Karen's fingers touched my cheek, and then the moment she pulled away like she'd been burned. I didn't want to be a bad man. I didn't want to be a secret. I also didn't want to pretend my chest didn't feel lighter when I was with her. The next morning, I went to work like nothing happened. I built a porch step for a client in town. I measured boards. I drove screws. I nodded at people in the hardware store. But my head was still in Karen's kitchen. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach turned. Around noon, my phone lit up with a message from Karen. "Thank you for answering. Thank you for not lying. I'm sorry I pulled you into this." I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, "You didn't pull me. I walked in. We can't hide this. I won't do that to him." She replied fast, "I agree. I'm scared. But I agree." That was the moment I knew what I had to do, even if it wrecked me. I called Ryan that evening. He answered on the second ring, cheerful like always. "What's up, man?" My mouth went dry. I stood outside my truck in a gravel lot behind the diner, watching the sunset fade behind the trees. "Ryan?" I said, and my voice shook. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me all the way before you say anything." There was a pause. His tone changed. "Okay, what is it?" Quote, I swallowed hard. "I've been at your mom's place a lot, not just for the bed. We've been having dinner, talking. It started innocent. I swear it did." Another pause, longer this time. "And now?" Ryan asked, slow and careful. I forced the words out. "Now it feels like more than that, and I don't want it to. Not like this, not behind your back. Nothing happened, Ryan. No affair, no secret relationship. But I can't pretend I don't feel something, and I hate myself for it." The silence on the other end was so heavy it made my chest hurt. Ryan finally spoke, and his voice wasn't loud. That was worse. "You're telling me you have feelings for my mom." "I'm telling you I got in too deep before I understood what it was," I said. "And I'm telling you because you deserve the truth." He let out a breath that sounded like it scraped his throat. "How long?" "A few weeks," I said. "After the bed?" "The Tuesday nights." "The coffee." It got close emotionally, and then I stopped it. We stopped it. "Last night you called." "That's why I'm calling now." Ryan didn't answer right away. Then he said, tight and raw, "Put me on with her." My heart dropped. "She's not here." "Then tell her I'm coming home," he said, "tomorrow." I felt my knees go weak. "Ryan." "Tomorrow," he repeated. "And Caleb, don't go near her until I get there." The line went dead. I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, feeling like I'd just ripped my own life in half. But underneath the fear, there was a small part of me that felt relief. No more hiding. I texted Karen right away. "He knows. He's coming tomorrow. I'm sorry." She replied a minute later, "Thank you for being honest. I'll be ready." The next day felt like waiting for a storm to hit. By late afternoon, Ryan's rental car pulled into Karen's driveway. I didn't go inside. I parked down the road by the lake where you could see the porch swing moving in the wind. My chest was tight, my hands sweating, my mind racing with every possible outcome. An hour passed. Then 2. When my phone finally buzzed, it was a text from Karen. "Come." I walked up that gravel path like a man walking into court. The porch light was on, warm and soft, but there was nothing warm about the air between us. Ryan opened the door before I could knock. He looked tired, not angry in a loud way, angry in a deep way, hurt. He stepped outside and closed the door behind him. I couldn't tell if he wanted to hit me or hug me. That's how close we'd been before this. "I talked to her," he said, voice flat. I nodded. "Okay, Quote, he stared at me like he was trying to understand how I could be the same person he trusted. You two didn't do anything? He asked. No, I said. We didn't cross that line. He exhaled hard. But you wanted to. I didn't lie. Yes. Ryan looked away toward the lake, jaw tight. Do you love her? The question made my throat burn. I don't know if it's love yet, I said, but I know I care about her more than I should. Ryan laughed once, sharp and bitter. Yeah, that's the problem. The front door opened then, and Karen stepped out onto the porch. She didn't look like a woman trying to trap someone. She looked like a woman who hadn't been honest with herself for a long time, and finally stopped running. Ryan, she said softly. He turned to her, and for a second he looked like a little kid again. Mom, he said, and his voice cracked. Why him? Karen's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. Because he was there, she said. Because he listened. Because he made me feel like I wasn't just filling time until life ended. Quote, Ryan flinched like her words hurt, and I could tell it wasn't only about me, it was about the distance between them, the guilt he carried for leaving, the fear that he'd missed her pain. I'm your mom, she said, but I'm also a person. I didn't plan this, I tried to ignore it, but I'm done pretending I don't want to feel alive. Ryan shook his head, breathing hard. And you want to feel alive with my best friend? Karen stepped down one porch step, closer to him. I want to feel alive, she repeated, and I don't want secrets. If this ever becomes anything, it will only be with honesty. Ryan's eyes cut to me. And what do you want? I swallowed and said the hardest thing I've ever said. I want you in my life, I told him, and I want her in my life. But if I have to choose, I'll step away, because you didn't deserve this. Karen's head snapped toward me. Caleb! I kept my eyes on Ryan. I won't sneak around. I won't be the reason you lose trust in your mom. Ryan stared at me for a long time. Then he looked back at Karen, and his shoulders sagged like the fight drained out of him. I don't want you lonely, he said, voice low, but I don't know how to be okay with this. Karen nodded slowly. That's fair. Ryan wiped a hand over his face, angry tears he didn't want to admit to. I need time, he said. Karen's voice was soft. You can have time. Ryan looked at me again, and it felt like he was making a choice that hurt him. You're going to give us space, he said. You're going to stay away for now. If you respect me at all, you'll do that. My chest tightened, but I nodded. I will. Karen's eyes met mine, and I could see the pain there, but also respect. That night, I walked back down the gravel path alone. The lake was still. The porch light stayed on behind me. I didn't know if I'd just lost Karen forever or saved something bigger than what I wanted. Weeks passed. I didn't go to Karen's house. I didn't text her except once, to make sure Ryan wasn't leaving her in the dark. She replied with 2 words. I'm okay. Ryan didn't talk to me either. Not for a while. I tried to pour myself into work. I built a dining table for a young couple. I fixed a roof for an older man who paid me in cash and homemade jam. Life kept moving, like it always does, even when your heart feels stuck. Then one evening, my phone buzzed. Ryan. I stared at the name for a full 10 seconds before I answered. Hey, I said. His voice was quiet. Hey. We sat in silence for a beat. I'm not okay with it, he said finally. Not fully. But I've been thinking about what you said. I swallowed. Okay. He exhaled. Mom's been happier. She's painting again like she used to. She signed up to teach a class at the community center. I haven't heard her laugh like that in years. My chest tightened. I'm glad. Ryan's voice turned rough. I hate that it's you. I do. But I hate more that she was dying inside and I didn't see it. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't pretend. I'm sorry, I whispered. I know, he said. And I know you didn't lie to me. You could have. You didn't. He paused, then said, if anything happens, it has to be slow. It has to be open. No sneaking. No hiding. My breath caught. Ryan. Don't thank me, he cut in. I'm not giving you a blessing. I'm giving you a chance to not ruin everything. I nodded even though he couldn't see it. I understand. He hesitated, then added, she's having a little art show next Friday at the community center. She asked if you'd come. She told me she won't if it's too much for me. My heart pounded. Are you going? I am, he said, because she's my mom. And because I'm trying. My throat tightened so hard it hurt. Okay. Okay, he repeated, and then, softer, don't make me regret this, Caleb. I won't, I promised. Friday night, I stood in the back of the community center with my hands in my pockets, feeling like the whole town could see through me. There were folding chairs, paper cups of punch, and Karen's paintings on the walls. The lake was only a mile away, but it felt like another world. Karen stood near a table with her hair down, a simple sweater on, paint under one fingernail like she'd been working right up until the last minute. She looked nervous when she saw me, like she didn't know if she was allowed to hope. Then Ryan walked up beside her and said something low in her ear. Karen's shoulders eased. Ryan glanced at me across the room. His face was still guarded, but he gave me a small nod. Not forgiveness, not approval, just a sign that I could breathe. Karen came toward me slowly, stopping close but not touching. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied, and my voice almost broke. Her eyes searched mine. Thank you for not running. I swallowed. Thank you for not hiding. We stood there under fluorescent lights in a small Oregon town, surrounded by regular people and paper cups and paintings that showed pieces of her soul. It wasn't a movie moment. It was quiet, real, earned. Karen held her hand out, palm up, not demanding, just offering. I took it. And across the room, Ryan watched us, jaw tight, eyes wet, trying to accept that his mom was a person who deserved love, even if it made the world feel strange. Karen squeezed my fingers once, gentle but sure. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt something solid under my feet. Not the bed I built, not the furniture. The truth, the kind you can actually build a life on.